I met in Andrius for the first time in Paris in 2023 when I was staying as a resident in Cité des Arts, and I created a small project in like Cité and invited Andrius, which was the first time we worked together. And I was quite impressed by working with him. So when I had an opportunity to create a show here, I was immediately thinking about Andrews and then started a conversation with him. Can you talk about the title of this exhibition, Obol? And then can you elaborate on it?
So the exhibition is called Obol after this coin that would historically be placed into the mouths of the deceased people. And it's a coin that is meant to be payment, the final payment, to bring you through the river Styx into the underworld. There is, in many different traditions, actually, an idea of a ferryman, a person that actually brings you from one world to another. And in order to be able to pay for this journey, you have an obol placed in your mouth. But this idea of essentially placing different goods and sending goods, grave goods, and mixing different economies, both of the underworld and of the present world, the afterworld, was very important. I guess we both were constructing the show and how it kind of basically dwells not only on the political, cultural, but also economical systems of both the underworld and the present world.
I think this idea of underworld is pretty much related to the material bitumen, which we're like having a central focus on this exhibition from the very beginning. We actually went to Niigata to see the real bitumen fountain, and then we both of us are quite impressed by the experience. Can you talk about your experience with bitumen and then how it's developed into this exhibition?
Bitumen has always been fascinating for me for the fact that it actually is a very old material. I mean, first of all, it's a million years of old algae that has been pressed down and kind of became this most viscous material that we have. Bitumen never settles. It is never calm. It continues to move. I feel like in this exhibition, I kind of really synthesized all of those ideas. So that the fact of, for example, going to indeed visit the Niigata bitumen extraction site as well as the museum was very important because actually then, once you actually see the material itself, it became so much more alive. And so bitumen somehow spreads through the different works of this exhibition. It both stains, engulfs, mummifies the works. For example, one of the works that we have here is Breakfast at Persephone's, which is essentially pomegranates that have been engulfed by bitumen. So essentially, they're basically being mummified inside, and those processes will continue happening. Then with the 7 panels that we have in the exhibition, they're covered with the Niigata bitumen, which is also continuing to move and continuing to change. So this idea of continuum and things never stabilizing, I think, also became very important because of the bitumen itself.
So bitumen, in a sense, is like connecting this ancient histories and also the current world within this exhibition. Like it's actually like crossing over through the like axis of bitumen, and then this kind of like distorted time and also like viscosity of the time is one of the like important like aspect of this exhibition. I would like to hear more about the idea from you.
Well, I come from sound, after all. And even though I work with objects and films and installations and things, I still think a lot through sound. And also, essentially for me, sound is directly connected to time. So I think of sound as this very strange architecture of time. And time in a very kind of both philosophical but also very physical sense. So kind of also like the idea of bitumen as this material that was indeed like sacred, they would use it for mummification or for example for covering the zikurat. Then this kind of material becomes something very mundane, it's like used in asphalt for roads and, for indeed, waterproofing your boat. This transformation is interesting from like sacred to profane, from profane to sacred.
Work that has a very like physical like presence in this exhibition is Black Lagoon, which is inspired by Charon's mythology. The idea of transition is symbolically expressed through this Black Lagoon.
I guess this exhibition kind of is playing with a lot of double meanings and a lot of both word plays and conceptual plays, but play in a very kind of poetic sense of the word. So similarly to that, it's like with this boat, indeed, it's a reverence to the Charon's boat, the last journey. But at the same time, this boat is engulfed in kilograms and kilograms of bitumen, rendering it almost, impossible to actually be floating. So this functionality of, waterproofing suddenly also becomes kind of its own dead end.
On the sonic wise, there are two sound works here, and then both of them are like intertwined with each other and then making an entire soundscape. Can you please tell me a bit more about like each sound piece and then how it's connected with each other?
So the two different halls have same sound word is kind of split together into two parts, and then again, kind of viscously, it bleeds into each other. So in one of the halls, you have trance track, essentially a famous trance track that I re-recorded, and I re-recorded it in a slow down way. So it's slowed down 7 times, and it has all the high frequencies removed. So you essentially get all these like resonances and kind of very strange patterns, that emerge when you stretch the sound. You kind of get all these artifacts that all of a sudden become audible. So it's like as if kind of zooming into some sort of I don't know, fabric or something, and actually starting to see microscopic sonic beings that somehow emerge like ghosts, essentially. And speaking of ghosts, in the other hall, you have a sound work that is 7-channel installation work, where essentially I'm using Armenian incantations and spells from a dead language, which is called Rushtuni. And I first used these spells for my solo project at the Venice Biennale, representing Armenia. And so it was kind of a nice way of also connecting these two works. And so basically they incant these spells of kind of like apotropaic magic, so magic that is meant to create a different world. And so you hear these murmurings next to the laser screen, which is projecting these kind of like eschatological announcements from the underworld, the announcements of the apocalypses to come. So these sound works somehow, I mean, for me, they function as one piece, but simply like spread into two different places and bleeding into each other.
The idea of this exhibition is actually like underworld rave. Can you more elaborate on that?
In the exhibition, I guess I'm playing with this idea of both underworld and underground. So how the aesthetics of a trance, but trance both in the musical genre sense and also as this kind of psycho kind of phenomenon, how it becomes essentially this body, a body of both within the exhibition space, but both a sonic body and also a kind of imaginary body. So the exhibition somehow runs through symbols or parts of a rave, underground rave, and like this kind of playing around with the idea of underworld and underground. We all, in different traditions, we have different ideas of underworld, but they all seem to be kind of similar too, because we're essentially projecting our own desires into the underworld, our own political, economical, cultural desires. So we tend to, in different cultures, we tend to have, for example, ways of speaking to our dead, communicating, sometimes even sending goods, like hell money, for example, or kind of passing different things. So I guess imagining this exhibition as a club, but club for the chthonic beings, for the beings that are both underground or both dead or perhaps unborn, was quite a fascinating.